been the advisor to the Office of the President of the National Security Council. So he's been very involved in the highest level of discussion, policy, issues related to NATO when Romania joined. So we'll talk about that a little bit today. But it is, and he is a professor at the University of Bucharest, where he has led the Black Sea area program, which has been a real source of cooperation for us here at the University of Pittsburgh, and we've worked together for several years on these issues. So it's been a dream of ours to bring Professor Zulean back here to Pitt. And so we'll just kick things off by asking him a few questions.
Okay.
And so I'll ask him a few questions. We'll have a bit of a conversation, and of course, really open things up to the audience in a few minutes. But one of the reasons he's here is because he has a new book called Social Values and Identities in the Black Sea region. It's an edited volume that he's worked on with several colleagues from around the Black Sea region. And you can get there's a flyer for it if you're interested in purchasing the book up at the front. But before we talk about the book, I want to talk a little bit about sort of the major issues happening right now in the Black Sea region. And, you know, when we see the Black Sea region here in the United States, most of the discussion is focusing on the war in Ukraine. There's a lot that we're hearing about the grain deal or the grain deal gone wrong with Russia. And I'm wondering from the perspective of Romania and maybe from the perspective of those who work on this issue of the Black Sea, what are the main issues that really are confronting you today?
Well, thank you, Jen. Thank you, SPR and Pittsburgh for bringing me back here. I should detour a little bit to say thank you for bringing me here with such a hot topic. And just to correct about the book, it's an edited book, so we have like, I mean, to get deep, it's like about a dozen of people writing here, just sort of initiating the discussion and the book, and we are glad we succeeded. It is brand new, just show up in mid-August, so it's a brand new book and very timely because when we started it was 2019, and then was still a quiet area, I mean, with the frozen conflict. But now, in the meantime, it became a very hot area. So when you ask about the Black Sea issues, I should answer in several ideas. So some of them I was like looking. We have like 4 blurbs. The most complex is, of course, from Jen, but I would start with it gives you an answer from the other guy, Michael Slobodchikov, who said the Black Sea area is currently geopolitical ground zero. So I think you can watch on the CNN or some other outlets, you'll see that never before was every day portraying the Black Sea on the map, on the global discussion. So it became a ground zero for global politics. Another reason why Black Sea is important, I would say it's for historical legacy. Like even I would go back to the Bible, not very far in the, but since your colleague is called Noah, you know, the Noah had a ship built for saving the world on the Ararat Mountains in Armenia today. So it was important, but during not only during the ancient times, but in the contemporary times. So what I would say it's important to know about the history of the Black Sea and why it's important today is that always in history they have a hegemon. So in the Greek ancient times or Greek cities around the Black Sea, and they call it Pontus Euxinus, also with Roman Empire and the Byzantine Empire. Later on, Italians in the Middle Ages come and we call it Mare Maggiore after the name of the Italians from Genoa and Venice. Then Ottoman Empire came and they call it Caradeniz. Then Russian Empire came, and it was called Черное море, and now we call it in English Black Sea. So it is relevant to say that the Black Sea was always dominated or governed by an empire or by somebody powerful. And now this was one of the issues we are trying to elaborate or to argue. Now it's a sort of actually we are going to talk more and to relate with your project. What is the future of governance in the region? Can we face a sort of bottom-up governance in the region? But let me, I wrote here some, of course, geographically, there is a geopolitical importance. There was a guy called Mackinder in 1999 who said the one who already lead command Eastern Europe, command the world. So I ended up about the importance of the Black Sea by saying that, I'm not sure how many are aware, that two American congressmen introduced a bill called Black Sea Security Act. Their name is Mitt Romney and Shaheen. They introduced in 2022. It was voted in July. So basically pushing a pressure for the American government to have a policy around the Black Sea. So once the bill is adopted soon, the United States will have a clear policy in the 180 days. So there are enough reasons to be interested in the Black Sea. But if you come with the war in Ukraine, you can see now the Black Sea is important, how the grain crisis affected the world, the African countries, and the Russians still control everything, and including, we can talk from the Romanian perspective. As a member of NATO, we consider as being the first time in history as the most safe time in history, when Romania is so safe due to the NATO partners. But we saw last couple of weeks how the war affected, including Romania. It was a drone falling on the Romanian territory.
Yeah, so can I ask you about that? Because that's something I think that a lot of us here have been watching very carefully. I was actually in Ukraine when that drone fell on Romania. And at first, the Romanian government didn't recognize, or was silent about it for a couple of days. Obviously, when a Russian when such a weapon, such a bomb or debris from a drone falls on NATO territory when it's launched by Russia, that really raises a lot of questions about the importance of NATO, the centrality of NATO, and the role that it plays. Obviously, if Romania were just answering this question by itself and wasn't a NATO member, it may have spoken far faster than it did. Can you tell us a little bit about what the reaction of Bucharest has been to that? Should we expect to see more escalation coming from the Romanian side?
I don't have now the private information from Romanian government, but I have an experience in the government. And what I should say, first of all, I think it's a vulnerability of NATO. We don't have clear plans what's happened in the neighborhood immediately in the case of conflict. NATO, on the one side, doesn't want to be involved in the war with Russia, so he's doing indirect support of Ukraine, but not direct. On the other hand, Biden administration stated clearly that if an inch of the territory of NATO is attacked by Russia, there will suffer consequences. I don't know what does it mean, consequences. I guess there is no clear strategic plan what to do. So this is the idea. If I want to go back in history, like recent history, one happened with Kosovo in Yugoslavia, and when American administration decided to attack Serbia, the last words of Madeleine Albright was, "Our credibility is at stake," because if they threatened several times Milosevic to see it, and they didn't do. And once they said our credibility at stake, immediately they took measures. So if I make a parallel now, I don't know if Biden will continue and say our credibility is at stake because the drone hit Romanian territory. I am not sure if we have a clear plan. probably there is no any intention to intervene, but I don't want to blame only NATO. I think the Romanian government is sort of the public communication is not so good. I mean, the first responder is like to deny nothing happened. It's like we are not sick, we are not guilty. But so they just apply this type of philosophy. They deny. But until they consulted NATO, what should we do? Should we act or not? And yeah, of course, fact. But I'm sure the Romanian government is not going to enter the war with the Soviet Union. Sorry, Russia, still continued by the Soviet mind of Putin. So yeah, probably. You know, as a follow-up of that, is a funny thing. Ukraine, basically, they became an important center of exporting the grains through the Danube. And just across the Danube, like 1 mile, is Romanian city of Tulcea, and also right near the Rhine, it's like a small village of 500 people living. So Romanian government just decided to build a shelter for the villagers, just in case of by accident another drone comes. And of course, this is my my view. I think Romanian abstained to send some anti-air missiles or something in the right near the Danube. So they are still very carefully in the war. They don't want to provoke war with Russia in the name of NATO. So this is, I think, the situation up to now. But on the other hand, the new NATO concept gives power to bring more special forces in the eastern flank. There is a sort of medium and long-term investment of Eastern Europe. And sorry if I the infrastructure and the troops are not in place. So I wrote an article a couple of years ago for Balkan Investigative Network about necessity to foster the infrastructure. And I think it's exactly what happened now with the 3C initiative. This is another initiative, 3C, was launched in 2015, and they are still talking about how to build roads and for in case of conflicts, and how to bring more troops in Eastern Europe. Because once again, my vision is that Eastern Europe is not fully integrated into NATO. There are troops still in Germany and not in Poland or Romania, so which ask for them.
And that would be something that would antagonize, I think, Russia quite a bit. The prospects of having those troops, American troops in particularly, directly in Romania would be seen as a provocation.
Yes, but the paradigms change. I mean, that was true in 1997 when the Russian NATO-Russia Council was founded to protect Russian feelings. NATO expanded eastward, the eastern expansion of NATO, but the situation changed after 2008, after Putin attacked Georgia. 2014-15 with Crimea and green soldiers in eastern Ukraine, and today attacking direct Ukraine. I think the situation has changed. This NATO-Russia Council is not operational. I think it's suspended, so we don't have to care about that now. We have to foster the NATO territory. Otherwise, we have only 2 American bases in Romania, like 500 people in Mihail Kogornicianu, and something like anti-missile deployment in Deveselu. Otherwise, so it's very easy. If Putin got mad, can attack overnight a NATO territory, and of course, Biden would say, our credibility at stake and has nothing to do but the start of war. So I don't think we have to protect too much Russian feelings. We are not neighbors. We are neighbors with Ukraine, not with Russia.
One of the issues just related to that, when we come to the issue of credibility and what does Biden mean when he says we're also coming out of the war in Ukraine obviously follows. And in Craiova, is your home city, and I was training Romanian military, a NATO, so a group of senior officers from NATO who, Romanian officers who were deploying or had deployed to Afghanistan. And I think we forget the real involvement of the Romanian military in that effort, and the close cooperation between the Romanians and the United States and NATO. But this issue, we talk about credibility. I don't want to have a sidebar about U.S. credibility in the region, but I think a lot of people are questioning, after Afghanistan, after Syria, how credible is the United States? So that puts Romania in a very precarious position. Although politicians say one thing, but what will the United States do on the other hand? So I think this is a big question, and it's understandable why the Romanians are concerned about this. Yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, just want to say that, okay, there is not only American credibility at stake. I was working for 2 Romanian presidents, and in 2006 I participated in drafting the national security strategies and asking the Romanian institutions to send their proposal on the strategy. I saw, it was my feeling, the Romanian institutions said, we don't have to care about our own investment because NATO is going to defend us. So they said, okay, la dolce vita, because NATO is going to defend us. So it's like a fault from both sides. On the other hand, this withdrawal from Afghanistan was a bad notice, I think, misinterpreted by the FSB or for Russia. So now is the moment, because American credibility, they didn't succeed in Afghanistan. So they are very weak. So now we should do our attack or recovering what they call Novorossiya, the southern part of Ukraine. And just what popped in my mind was Timothy Gerton-Ash mentioned that in 2000, when Yeltsin was ceding the power to Putin, this young guy, Putin, was saying that we don't have to forget Crimea. So I think it's a very tough fight. Russia won't ever try to give up Crimea in the case of negotiation. On the other hand, Ukraine the same. So that will be a tough point of discussion on Crimea. So the biggest fight I anticipate will be on Crimea from both sides. Yeah, by the way, just not diverting the discussion, I didn't present you the Black Sea. So do you know, I was thinking to ask like a quiz, which country does, there are like 6 countries sharing like less than 3,000 kilometers of littoral of the Black Sea, and which one used to have the biggest littoral? I think that the answer was, until 2 years ago, was Ukraine. So you never expect. On the north side, Ukraine is the longest territory, but not anymore, because Putin already occupied half of their territory, and Turkey was the second, and then Romania, Bulgaria, and Georgia. Russia, of course, was third. And so speaking about this Black Sea littoral, what I also want to underline, I was looking in the literature review in our book, and Ukraine didn't pay much attention until now to the Black Sea Navy. So they surrendered, even if they changed, the mindset of the population, Orange Revolution, everything changed the mindset, and they became clearly wanted to defend their nation and their country. They didn't invest at all in the Black Sea fleet. So this is the weakest point, I think, of the Ukraine military, because Sevastopol was in charge of everything, and giving the many rights to Putin and Russia to consider this the Russian lake, so it's their own territory.
Yeah, and so actually, it's amazing that you brought up Michael Slobodchikov, whose quote, he was actually a college classmate of mine.
Oh.
And we actually took a course together on Russo-Turkish relations. So I thought, of course, on Russo-Turkish relations, we talk about, I don't know, NATO or something. No, we talked about 19th century treaties for control of Istanbul. And so most of the history of the Black Sea was really about who controlled those straits going in and out of the Black Sea, right? But it really seems like the politics of the region has shifted so much. I mean, of course, there was a the wars over Crimea that happened in the mid 19th century. Crimea was always a focal point, but now we're seeing, beyond Crimea and beyond Istanbul, real contestation for these ports in the Danube, concerns about Georgia. We haven't really talked about Georgia. Other parts of the Black Sea that historically haven't been the epicenter of politics or war in the region. Do you see this, balance of power? You talked about how power is shifting. Ukraine was the largest literal state in the region, but they never developed their Black Sea, their fleet. Obviously, Russia took that over when they took over Crimea in 2014. But do you see that balance of power shifting?
Actually, relate also because I did the first chapter on literature review here. The two French guys, one is called Chartres, was doing a sort of evaluation of balance of power in the Black Sea. So for European Union Security Studies Institute, and of course it's old, 2016. But what he mentioned was we have like 6 countries divided like this. He called it conservative countries like Russia and Turkey, because historically they want to conserve their power. On the one side, you have Turkey with the Montreux Convention having the power, including opposing to the United States to send naval ships for Romania or help of Romania or Bulgaria. You have also Russia, of course. We still call Romanian President Băsescu made Putin upset, saying that Black Sea is the Russian lake. So, but in their mindset, I think they consider the Russian lake, and I think still is the Russian lake, even if you follow these problems in the Black Sea with the grains, they are like controlling civilian navies. So these 2 countries are sharply called conservatives. Then what another called revisionist, and that was Ukraine and Georgia, because they wanted to join the Western Europe, either NATO or EU, but they are not allowed on the Russian side, the 2008-2014 conflict. And the other countries, Romania and Bulgaria, called it reformative, because they said, okay, a new sheriff is in town, which is NATO and EU, and we want to enter this game of the balance of power. And that was before Putin decided to attack. And now I think the concept doesn't fit anywhere, because Russia became a sort of revisionist power. They want to keep their power, and Black Sea it's very well represented the strategic culture of Russia. Like they said in literature that even from Peter the Great, it's a willingness to control the Danube and Istanbul Straits, and so also because it's the only what they call the warm water, and they can export and control the exports and oil and everything. Of course, the issue of oil. So responding again, I think now it's assumed pressure from the West to be part of the game, including European Union became interested in being a sort of global or regional power. We have Russia revisionism, and the war in Ukraine will decide who is going to control or play in the Black Sea.
So I just want to tie this last point you made back to the book, which I think is really important, and I encourage everyone to pick up the latest research on the Black Sea region, and there's scholars looking at public opinion data, historical research, geopolitics, you name it, it's in here. But if we think of the Black Sea as, there's a couple of ways to think about it. When you were working on this book and we were talking about this project, which I'll talk to you about all in a second, we're thinking about the Black Sea region as sort of a source of positive sum cooperation. So one of the things that we're particularly interested in is bottom-up regional cooperation. Is that we have formal multilateral organizations like the European Union. The United Nations is an international organization, but we think about regional organizations. There are many that have formal organizational structures. The Black Sea region, has a few small, not very important ones. There's a lot of cooperation that really happens from the bottom up, and these kinds of dynamics we're seeing, across the world right now as there's greater multipolarity. You're seeing a lot of bottom-up regional cooperation, and that's a very positive story. But when you describe, when we come to the war in Ukraine and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the story that you're describing about control for this territory really becomes a zero-sum issue, right? That it's one side is controlling the sea and versus another side controlling the sea. And this is very different from, the positive sum story about gains from trade, regional cooperation. So if we think about these two different visions of what the Black Sea could be, is it possible to say that the Black Sea really is a coherent region? Or is it just an area of contestation?
Yeah, well, I realize that I didn't say too much about the book, so I can explain more, and maybe you can have the sort of slide it like the next one, and maybe the next two. Okay. This is about the book. So basically, the challenge of the book was there are many books from history, geography, geopolitics at the macro level talking about the Black Sea, but they are looking in history, geography, but nobody care about the population, what the people think. So the idea came when we met the people from what is called World Value Survey. There is this Engelhardt from University of Chicago, I think he died last year. He brought databases from all over the world with people analysts from Harvard, and they have huge databases and huge network of research of people doing research with data. So we asked, okay, let's go beyond the geopolitics and see what the people in the region think of different issues based on religion, democracy, culture, and so this is one reason. This is the main contribution of the book. What is the identity? What is the culture? Do we develop a regional culture? So, and the second is about the governance, exactly your question. So, speaking about the governance of the region, maybe you can look on this. I put on this, sorry, but I have only 2 slides. So, this is a famous interlocking institution. So, map. So you can see the SEC is the only, these are like top-down institutions of governance in Europe. So you have the EU, Eurozone, European Union, NATO, and the groupings of the countries. So the only one, but still bottom up, is Black Sea Economic Cooperation that brings all the 6 countries plus including Russia, including Greece. And my colleague and our colleague Paula Ligica wrote a chapter about Black Sea Economic Cooperation. And basically his conclusion was that it doesn't work. It was initially a Turkish initiative, that was very famous in the early 90s when Turkey wanted to, Russia was weak and Turkey wanted to became again the sort of leader of the region, but on economic side. So, but it didn't work. So Romania had also some other initiative, Black Sea Forum, all sorts of Black Sea institutions that also didn't work. So finally, Romania decided to go for a bottom up and proposed to have a German Marshall Fund of Black Sea cooperation and give monies to NGOs and the people for the local initiatives. So this is a new trend. I think there is not enough time to evaluate the impact. But I think this should be the future to see, because otherwise, if you look on the map, we don't have, for example, a highway to move from one country to the other, to surround the Black Sea. Even this mobility, we don't have too much cooperation. So the future would be the bottom up, and here I'm glad to relate to the Jennifer project and see how we can learn from this Ostromian school about governing commons. Actually, another digression maybe. I was very big fan in 2004, was one important paper written by Ron Asmus and I forgot the other name, was a Republican and a Democrat, proposed, we expanded NATO, but now what happened in the neighborhood, in the Black Sea? So he wrote a paper about the Black Sea, and the paper asked for what is the most common denominator. And I jumped and said, okay, the most common denominator, which is in the governing common goods, will be the security sector reform in my mind. So I proposed a paper in 2004 about security sector reform as a sort of the most common denominator or the common good, but it didn't work. So I should say that my prediction fails. Now even the security sector is not cooperating, but they are fighting. Yeah, we should rethink about that paper. So speaking about the governance, this top-down didn't work. We have to rethink now. It depends on the end of this conflict, how to rethink the new policy of development in the region, but also on the people to people. If I want to jump to this identity, we talk too much maybe about geopolitics. If we talk about the identity, our main finding in conclusion was about, let me show the next slide. So basically this is what is called cultural map done by Engelhardt himself. So more or less inspired by Samuel Huntington, based on some data. So you can find this map in a website called Values and Identities. You can see how the countries are grouping based on different social data. I'm not spending much time on this, but you see here the majority of Black Sea countries. But this is already done by Welzer and Ingelhardt. Our contribution, we try to see if there is actually my colleague Marina and Ksenia from Ukraine, based on the same methodology, try to see how the country moved to a common culture in the region. And we didn't find correct, sort of very common culture developed in the, but you can see the movement. They move, they start grouping, and we still have to explain, maybe in the next paper, we have to explain what is the cause. It's like a sort of influence of soft power of European Union. Looks like the influence, for example, Russia 1990 moved here, Bulgaria moved here. So more or less you see a grouping in the terms of culture. So and identity is not the final answer. So there is basically not a Black Sea culture, but is a move towards some common values and identities. And maybe I took too much, but on the issue of regionness, so if this is a regional note from your question, there is another framework of evaluation in the regional studies by Hetney and Sauderbaum, I think. They basically said, if you consider a region from less region to the most integrated region, there are five stages I wrote here too. Regional space, regional complex, regional society, regional community, and regional state. So based on our analysis, and it's part of our conclusion, we are right in the middle. So I mean, the Black Sea is now moving from the regional complex or regional security complex to a regional society. And in order to fulfill a regional society, yeah, of course, we need to foster the cooperation, people to people, NGOs to NGOs, until we reach a regional society. And of course, I don't suspect to have a regional state, Black Sea regional state, but a regional society could be a good thing. Only we have to come back to geopolitics at the end of this war. I think we don't have in the West, in the NATO, in the EU, a sort of clear theory of victory. What do we expect? We say, okay, we support Ukraine. Even Ukraine, I'm not sure they have a clear, they say, okay, it's a statement that we want to have the same territory as we had before, but inside the society, I'm not sure if there is a clear theory of society. This is a term from Clausewitz and military science, theory of victory. What do you want by the end? So Russia is also not very clear. We see now some dissidents, including the Russian Academy of Science. Also in Europe, the longer the war, I think will be the less clear will be the theory of victory. So Germany, for example, switch like 180 degrees, Zeitenwende switch their policy, but now if they lose economically, they're like tired, upset. This AfD is getting more ground, populist more ground in all the regions. So we don't know yet. There is not a clear theory of victory. What the West expect at the end of this, and related with the Black Sea. So maybe I talked about it.
Yeah, so with that, speaking of people to people, I know that there are questions in the audience. So if you do have questions, if you could just state your name and tell us your affiliation. Yeah.
My name is Jonathan Harris. I'm an emeritus professor of political science. I used to teach Soviet and Russian politics here. I have a question from the blurb about this book, which I found very puzzling. You say that the volume shows how the common inheritance interferes with different religious and political institutional backgrounds, fostering the formation of a particular cultural area. Now, I don't know who the hell wrote that sentence, but what are the common values of this particular cultural area? I mean, when you take Georgia in the east, Turkey, Romania, I mean, what are these common cultural values that your study seems to be pointing towards?
Well, from there are like the book has case study, case by
I
case.
understand it's a very interdisciplinary point, but you're putting this in terms of the creation of some sort of common cultural area, and it's simply very difficult for me to understand anything other than the fact that they're all literal states on the borders of the Black Sea, but that common cultural area would look like, or is like.
Basically, this is need to be explained how the based on different issues like I don't know, for example, on ethnical nation versus civic nations. So they moved. There is a trend moving from ethnic nation to the civic nation, which is we are talking about the trends and not common in the sense that similar to everybody. It's a trend moving. I show in this map. So I mentioned that we didn't develop a common culture in the region, but the trends are closer to European Union. Let's say some of European Union values we measure here in the book, like I don't know, including on religion. So majority of them are still believers, like Turkey in religion, but the population decreased. They decreased the trust in religion. So we are talking about the trends on different issues like religion, democracy. But of course, we found some puzzling in the conclusion. We talk about this puzzling finding. For example, there are still people believing in similar in democracy, but they are waiting for a great leader to lead them. So not to be elected in a democratic way. So waiting for somebody to illuminate. Like in the case of Turkey, Erdogan became sort of this type of illuminated leader. In Russia, the same. I'm not sure. Maybe even Ukraine. I mean, it's a gifted leader now, Zelensky. But it's also based on this trust of the population. So they believe in democracy, but on the other hand, they are waiting for a leader.
Yeah, the European values now include fascist orientations. So when you talk about European values, which values are you talking about?
Well, yeah, I think it's too tough to say the European values are fascist. Like even there is a great increase of populist party, but they're 10 to 15% in many countries. So there is the population needs somebody to take this value and to represent them, and of course increase. But I don't feel a sort of danger of fascism. We are like 15% of the population.
Okay, we have several questions. Let me just, if we could take two, I'll just take them in the order that I saw the hands go up. You could.
So my name is Randall Hall. I'm the director of the European Studies Center. I apologize for coming late. But one anecdote and a question, and I've spent a great deal of time learning Turkish in Turkey and was taught largely by people from the Black Sea region. And found it interesting also in one of my classes. I've had a co-student who was the wife of a Georgian military officer who was part of the Turkish-Georgian military exchange. And they were stationed for 5 years, Turkish officers in Georgia to do joint exercises. There was a sense that there was a common cultural space on the coastal regions. That extended, in fact, largely and at least in Georgia and potentially all around into Ukraine. And I'm wondering if that might be something in the micro region that we're talking about here. So my question is, because I have not been in that environment for a long time, if that kind of, in the recent conflagration, if that kind of interstate exchange, especially vis-a-vis Turkey, has gone away, if you know that. And if the consideration of state configuration as the IR agents here is actually masking some of the very real culture of the region, and I anticipate also in some ways that a comparison to say the Mediterranean region, which at one point in time was fostered by the EU as a coherent region of exchange. Is not also a good point of comparison, because you have trading partners, blocks that then become agents of particular sorts of interests that are not necessarily the agents, the interests of the people on the region. So,
yeah, if I understood correctly about the sub-national cooperation, sub-regions, my point, I have two points to make. I think, first of all, if we look in the recent history, the same happens with the Visegrad countries, with the Southeast European countries, the Baltic countries. So initially, they are not very coherent, except the Baltic countries are still kept some common heritage and cooperation. However, once they got closer to EU or got the perspective of joining the EU or NATO, the culture, the mindset changed, and now we can talk about Europeanization of these regions. And I think this can happen also in the Black Sea situation. Otherwise, as you mentioned, it's still a mindset of conflict and not big power politics, but regional power. Turkey also would like to influence the region, the Turkish, and I wrote in my chapter about the new philosophy. So, for example, Russian mindset or Putin mindset is behind the Alexander Dugin philosophy of Neo-Eurasianism. So, build the Eurasian culture as alternative to European culture and want to impose this Eurasianism to the Black Sea. Also, the Turks, they have what was called Neo-Ottomanism by former Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Then this philosophy has changed by Erdogan So because the last goal of neo-Ottomanism was let's come back to our great power status, but zero problem with neighbors, which Erdogan didn't do. It's the second part. So they want to be a real sultan. So yeah, and as an outcome of this German Marshall Fund Black Sea, as far as I know, it's very hard to cooperate NGOs because also these big powers or regional powers, I would call, react. I mean, the Russian politics decided to fight against NGOs, cut the funding. Consider Soros is a sort of evil, or the CIA sent to Soros to sponsor to disintegrate Russia. Also, Turks did the same. So it's a continuous fight. But still, the population is actually this was my somehow not disagreement, but dissent from my colleague sociologists. Because if you take the social data, they are looking in the back for the situation now changes very fast. So and the attractivity of the soft power of European is very, very deep penetrating and very, very fast. So let's take the example of Ukraine. So in 2015 or 14, where elections where Yanukovych got 0.5% or won the elections, and in just less than a decade, look what's happened. So now we are wondering what the people who voted Yanukovych, how they think now after the war. So we don't have a poll now to think, but based on our data, it seems that radically, 70-80% they support Zelensky and the new politics of Ukraine. So what happened in the mindset, in the so fast that changed the mindset? I think it's an attractivity of the soft power, and the rich countries, Western Europe can attract the changing the opinions and including the beliefs. Thank you.
Nancy.
Yeah, so Nancy from the Center for Russian, East European, and Eurasian Study over at UCIS. I'm a colleague of Randall's. He's European and I'm Greece, so to speak. My question picks up on some of the themes already broached, and also to the commitment in your book to social values and identities. From what I understand of the confessional, that is to say, the religious profile of Romania, and I'm happy to be corrected, I'm an amateur. I understand it to be orthodoxy as a dominant component, autocephalous Romanian orthodoxy, and a Lutheran component, a Roman Catholic component. But my interest is in the Muslim component, which, if I'm not mistaken, lies along the littoral band, the Black Sea band. And that poses for me, at least as an outsider, some interesting questions. When you talk, for example, about the Turkish initiative in starting the Black Sea economic cooperation of the Black Sea Forum, it seems to me that there is a real possibility for what Jen has described as positive sum gain, or some kind of bottom-up regional cooperation, precisely from that Muslim band to Turkey. So my question, therefore, is that a potential source of cooperation, or is the internal to Romania, internal profile of the Muslims such that they're sociologically, economically peripheral to that potential for cooperation? You understand what I'm
Yeah. Hope I can answer, because this question was answered by Malina Voicu, one of the co-editors of the book. She's
So you have to buy the book.
Oh, I'm glad.
But I can speculate from our discussion, and well, the Muslim population, if you refer to Romania, is not so big; it's less than 1%. And I think Romania presents the situation of integrating and cooperation with the Muslim as sort of positive lessons learned from the experience, because in Dobroja, close to littoral, there is a mufti involved in any politics close to Turkey, and the danger, including for intelligence services, were coming from the Saudi Arabia type of. So there is a fight between Muslims. So guys coming from Saudi Arabia are trying to take the lead of Muslims in Romania. It didn't happen. So this is the situation in Romania. Small population, Muslim population, but still controlled by Turkish type of Muslims, and entering now the split of the Muslim religion. And Bulgaria, it's also an interesting situation with a bigger community of Muslims. They're based in former Romania, so close to Istanbul, and there is a problem of integration. And I think they are used by Erdogan to somehow to influence the regional politics, but not on the building an alternative to European Union culture, let's say, or they want just to be. The most evident is, I can tell like this from our data, the most evident influence of Turkish neo-Ottomanism, Erdogan, Muslims in the regional countries in Azerbaijan, of course, supporting not only economically, but from our data, is the only country when the religiosity increased over the last 30 years. So Azerbaijan was most secular before 30 years ago, and now under the influence of Turkey became more religious and returned to the religion Muslim identity. So.
And can I tuck in one tiny question? Sochi, the area around Sochi, it seems to be also, of course, it has many diverse populations, Greek and so forth. And I realize that the war has disrupted everything. But does Sochi also have promise in terms of Muslim populations that might be a connection across the Black Sea in a network, Muslim network, or not?
Well, I don't have this information.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we have several questions. I know. Well, maybe we just take a few, and then because our time is running.
I'm happy to defer because I'm going to FaceTime with Matt.
Okay.
Since you have others.
Perfect. And I should say, I was an ungracious host here. I forgot to thank the Ridgway Center for Security Studies for co-sponsoring, the Ford Center for Human Security as well as the Center for Russian and East European Studies that so kindly co-sponsored this event. So thank you, Michael, who's the director of that center. We just take a few questions here. Yeah.
Yeah, my name is John. I'm a graduate student here.
Where? In what department?
Security and Development Studies.
In Kispia.
Yeah. I just wanted to know, what do you think the geopolitical ramifications in the Black Sea region would be if Turkey theoretically were to join the European Union?
Okay, let's just, there's one question in the back. Yeah.
I'm highly impression international area study. I don't have as much like education, especially for my rural areas. But do you think that Romania will involve itself in mediation between Ukraine and Russia in 13 years? And if so, to what extent?
Okay, any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
So first, your question was about the can you recall?
Oh yeah. If Turkey were to join the European Union, what would be the broader ramifications for that?
Well, this is a good and tough question, but I remember that I was at a training in Athena with some leaders in the region.
Okay.
No, in Athens, Athens in Greece.
Albania is a very important Western province in Romania.
The best,
where he's from.
The best football team, like Steelers of Romania.
Yes, okay, yeah.
But
I'll take
European soccer.
Okay.
So, and I met the nephew of the former prime minister. I forgot now the name, and he said that since 1969, Turkey is using the European integration more as a sort of driving force for reforming Turkey. So basically, they are not waiting at the end of the road too much to be integrated. So even in Turkey, this idea of integration in Turkey is debatable. Plus the debates in European Union during the constitutions, European Union constitution, the discussion about declaring European Union identity as Catholic or Christian. I don't see in the short term integration of Turkey, but Turkey is gonna use this as, particularly after Erdogan. So Turkey is gonna use this to reform their. They have a huge diaspora in the European Union, but I don't see. However, we can do a foresight exercise and see what happens if Turkey is going to join the European Union. And my guess is it will be a huge resistance from the actual leaders of the European Union to get Turkey into. You look at the situation in NATO, so if you have a consensus vote, a country like Turkey can oppose any policy. So like now in supporting Ukraine. So yeah, from this point of view, they think twice if they take Turkey into the European Union. So I don't see in the next decade Turkey being a member of the European Union, but we can do a foresight exercise. Once Turkey follow these 31 chapters of acquis communautaire, they will. So I think the situation applies also to Ukraine. So now Ukraine is pushing, get us immediately into NATO and EU, but I don't think like a decision will take Ukraine immediately without conditionality. And look what happened recently in Ukraine, because they changed the Minister of Defense, so corruption is a big issue. So you won't take troublemaker and give them the rights to oppose to any policy. So look what happened in Hungary with Viktor Orban. So it can make a lot of troubles on decisions. So yeah, I don't think Turkey in the short term. But if it joins, either Turkey is changing the cultural values and will be a European country, or European Union will disappear maybe. Yeah.
And then there was a question about Romania's role in these potential.
Again, Romania also has no clear theory of victory in Ukraine. It's a big supporter, but what is strange for Romanian situation, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who was the BBC half year ago, and he declared that we are supporting, but we cannot state publicly. So what is the explanation for that? Romania is maybe second after Poland supporting, but in a secret way. I mean, not only hosting the Ukrainians, because Ukrainians are not like, for example, maybe 1 million Ukrainians pass through Romanian territory, but only 75,000 remains. Romania is not such attractive economically for Ukrainians. Also linguistically, also historically, there are some discussions. So Romania supports Ukraine now during the war time and also during the peace process, I am sure. But the strange situation is there are some Romanians. They know that Romanian territories, like up north in Bukovina near Cernăuți and south in Bucea, belongs to Romania, and they don't want to support too much. So basically, the government is doing many secret support for Ukraine, and but I think in the last time, more and more, they decided to get open and to show the support for Ukraine. Maybe they're wrong. Why not go publicly and say and educate your population and show that Ukraine is fighting for Europe as Romania was fighting in the Middle Ages. So yeah, I think Romania is going to play a role, but I don't see the leaders as very how to say, very active. So Romania is not so powerful in NATO and EU, even if we have the Deputy Secretary General, Mircea Joana is the Deputy Secretary General of NATO, but it's more based on individual traits and values and not on the Romanian power of negotiation. So he's going to support the peace process, but based on what can do, their importance and their influence.
Okay, we have a final question online. Noah, can you share?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Amidst the turmoil situation.
Who is the question from?
Mohammed Rafat. Amidst the turmoil situation caused by Russia in the region, is there a chance of addressing the security issues through governance or top-down rather than bottom-up approaches?
Let me think. I show you the map of the whole institution. It depends what does it mean. So in the actual situation, first we have to see the conflict finish. So and we can have scenarios. What happens if Ukraine win and regain back all the territories and then start over the process of governance with the Ukraine getting Crimea? We can start from the scenario of, don't exclude the scenario of Russia winning. And if for the military planners, why not? Could be even war with Russia and NATO. If Biden would decide our credibility is at stake, but it's less probable to have this type of war. The people are afraid basically of using nuclear weapons, so they're expecting. I'm not sure if you follow what Elon Musk declared, that he didn't give help to Starlinks to Ukrainians because Russian can interpret this as an act of war and can use the tactical weapons. So because Russians already deployed tactical weapons in Belarus, they are prepared even to attack from north. So it's a very complicated issue to say now top-down governance. But if NATO extends and EU extends and integrate Ukraine in a scenario of Ukraine win, we can somehow, maybe it's too tough to declare that, we can move from a Russian leg, Turkish leg, to European Union leg, or something like that.
So, I'm looking at this map and I forgot about Guam. Because Guam used to have two U's. The second U of Guam was Uzbekistan. And Uzbekistan pulled out of Guam. I didn't know that Guam still existed as a regional organization.
Yeah, it's not so active, but it's still on the paper. I remember it was somehow connected with the Washington. Zbigniew Brzezinski was one of the promoters of Guam in the 2000, and actually, just as a personal story, I was working for CSIS while I was a PhD student in 2000. I did a semester in Washington. And back then was the U.S.-Romania Action Commission. It's led by Zbigniew Brzezinski. Brzezinski has supported the commission, as assistant commissions to Romania and Poland. And back then, Brzezinski was a sort of very important figure with Kissinger on the back channel politics in the region, and not only promoted Guam, but immediately after I left the SPR, he built a sort of his main idea was NATO expanded, big expansion, 2004. EU expanded, integrated all East European countries. What happened on the line of borders? So he wanted to make a sort of, let's say, wise young people staying together year by year and discussing the cooperation wherever the border of West ended. So I think this was a good idea. And even in the situation you asked about the Black Sea, whatever happened when we draw the border, we still have to have a discussion, people to people, or expert cooperation on the other side, with the Western side of the people. Just a big raise for Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was basically, he was saying that if Russia will lose Ukraine, then we cannot treat it as a great power anymore. So maybe this is a fight behind the mindset that Russia has the feeling if it loses Ukraine, it will become a tiny regional power and will be somehow swallowed by China.
So speaking of good feelings, thank you so much for coming back here to Pitt, to give me it's wonderful to have, we've been waiting for this talk for several years, even before COVID. So thank you so much, Marian.